another. But Lydia is one person who's very wise. She will see everything clearly, even though it's not things she wants to see, yet she will see clearly and acknowledge that. That's very important for all of us to understand, right? And so over the years, we've seen how she has shown that she's a good student, have learned from the Lord the important things and values and have overcome. And all of us can learn this kind of attitude, this kind of spirit. So there's no surprise that the Lord has brought her to where she is today and positioned her as a kingdom subject, not just within the church community, but within the society. And so there's great wisdom in this little kid who has grown up. There's great wisdom in how she postured herself. And that's why the Lord wants us to also to follow His testimony in her life. All right, Father, we thank you that you have given each one of us your son, and to the extent in which we want to carry that testimony, you allow us to grow in that testimony of you. It is the spirit of prophecy working effectively in each one of us who dares to, who wants to, who is passionate about carrying your testimony. And we thank you among us. You have many, and you have your daughter, Lydia. And so today, may you take us deeper into your life, into your spirit working in us, affecting our lives, and fulfilling your purposes in our community and in our society and in this world. And so, Lord, prepare us even as we open the ears of our hearts to listen, and even take Lydia deeper into you as she stands up to declare this to all of heavens and earth and in our midst. We bless you and we thank you for your spirit. In Jesus' name, amen. You can help if you want. You can help put some scriptures if you want.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's so nice to see my Gen family today. Every Sunday, sometimes I'm grumpy and I may not express it, but I am grateful and blessed and happy to be a part of this church family. I guess it's been almost maybe 15, 16 years on and off that I've attended GEM with my family. There were a couple of years where I wasn't very committed, I guess, to the Lord or to this church. And so, but from the time that we started attending, I would say it's around 14 or 15 years. And I have to say that I've learned a lot by being here in this church amongst all of you, and also from the teachings that we've received from Pastor Bernard and from other servants of the Lord that the Lord has brought to this place. But most importantly, we're here and we learn from the Lord Himself. And, you know, what Uncle Frank was saying just now when he was sharing is that, you know, we are here to worship the Lord, we are here to seek Him, and we're here to, basically that all boils down to us being here to love Him and to learn Him and to learn from Him. I didn't really prepare something I didn't have come in here with a game plan, but there is a difference. But I also thought, oh, you know, when Moses went to speak to Pharaoh, the Lord said, don't worry, I'll put the words in your mouth. You don't have to worry about it, just be there. I don't think I can think that way when I go to court and I have to argue a case for a client. I can't just go in there and be like, well, God, I'm here. You do all the work. I think, you know, that would be stretching it a bit. But I think that in this situation, I think that, I feel that there are things that the Lord will have me share with you. And I don't think that this is going to be very doctrinally deep or sound or heavy or anything. And if I make mistakes in ideas that I share, I welcome Pastor to jump in and say, no, you were wrong. But this will be more, I think, an expansion of my testimony, my journey in the past few years. And I just want to share that with you to encourage you. But I want to add a caveat, and that is that God works in different ways in each person's life because we're all different. We're all unique individual people. And what I share, yes, there are things that are objectively very meaningful and special, like how God positioned me to be in the right place at the right time, of course. But don't let my story or my journey influence how you think about your own journey. But I want my journey to encourage you in that, God is always watching and that He has a tailor-made special plan for each and every person. And I know that's perhaps a pretty elementary message for a lot of people here because there are many people who are my senior, both in age and also in their walk with the Lord. But I think it's a good reminder because sometimes life gets in the way and we get carried away and we don't focus on God and we forget about His plan for us and we forget about Him. We get lost in all the things that we have to do in our everyday life and we forget that He's the reason that we're here and that He's the source of everything. So this is my favorite time, one of my favorite times of year. I love the early spring when the sun starts to shine and when the cherry blossoms and the plums all blossom. It's beautiful. It's a sign of renewal, and I think it reminds us that God gives life and that there's always He's always on the move and He's always doing something new, even though we may not feel that way. And I was talking to my mom a few weeks ago and I said something, I guess, kind of ignorant. And I said, why are there different seasons? And my mom said, well, the plants and the flowers and the earth, they have to rest too. And then they will be renewed and then they'll bring forth new life. And I think, our lives, and I thought, oh, she's right. And I thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't have asked that. That was a stupid question. If I thought about it a bit longer, I might have realized it myself. But I think that the things that we're surrounded by and that we take for granted are signs and little stories and lessons from God to remind us of how much He loves us and how He has a plan for us. So I think, especially in today's day and age, we're so caught up in our work and in social media and being always connected to people, being online and stuff, that we don't have those moments where we can slow down and we can look at nature and then we can see, how great He is. We think about the song, How Great Thou Art, and there was references to the mountains and the valleys and the spectacular beauty of nature. Now everyone's busy trying to take a picture of it so that they can put it on Facebook or Instagram. And I can say that I've been guilty of that. But I've also been off of Facebook and Instagram for over a year now. Yay! And I'm still alive, I'm here, it's fine. And I don't have LinkedIn. And it's funny because so many people have said, oh, you have to have LinkedIn in order to get a job and blah, 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 blah. And I have a job at one of the best firms in Vancouver. Probably the province, and maybe in the country.
Amen.
And I don't have LinkedIn. So take that, everyone who said I have to have LinkedIn. So you don't have to have LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or any of those things. Actually, you don't need anything else. You just need God.
Amen.
He's not a thing, but He's the only entity, thing, I don't know, what's the right
Reality.
He's our reality, and that's all we need. He is everything we need, and He's all we need. Back to what I was saying about this being my favorite time of year. I remember in 2014, at around this time of year, I think it was Sister Jean. She's the lady who painted these paintings that we have up here on the wall. She came to our church to do some prophetic painting sessions. How many of you were here for that? Okay, and I remember what some people painted. I remember, did you paint a globe? Is it the world or something like that?
Not me. I painted a door.
A door.
Okay, you painted a door.
How I painted
Volcano?
Yes.
And then Auntie Vivian, I remember painted, was it like a bowl?
Yes,
With
prayer.
And my
Incense.
mom, she painted the hands of Jesus, right? With the nail-pierced hands of Jesus. So I remember Sister Jean was at our church for 2 weeks, and my mom participated in the session, the painting session of the first week, and then she said, "Oh, you have to do it," she said to me, for the next week. And so I thought, okay, I'll do it. And just like, today, where I didn't come here with a huge, well-prepared message, I didn't really think about what I was going to paint throughout the week. And after church, we went into that really cold room that you had to meet in. That room to the side, that really cold room, and she had her paints set up, and she had a little kind of like a CD player, and she put on some worship music, and she instructed us to pray and to gain inspiration from the music. And so I had looked out, possibly when I was zoning out during the sermon or during the service, I had looked out the side window to the back parking lot, because I don't know if you all remember, but me and my family, we actually sit where we sat. Okay, think about where you're sitting right now and think about where you used to sit at church. I think everyone's kind of sitting where they used to sit, right? You were in front. I remember Uncle Hang and Auntie Kathy were there. Uncle James and Auntie Sue, were you guys over here?
Yes, I guess.
Okay, Martin, where were you? Where'd you sit? There, yeah. Okay, Denise was on this side for sure. And I feel like Uncle David and Auntie Mabel were on this side too, right? Somewhere, okay, so old habits die hard. That's clear. But so picture yourselves in the old church building, for those of us who weren't there. Just think of everyone sitting where they're sitting now in a different building. And so I would sit here and I would look out, and there were windows here that kind of opened out onto the back parking lot. And there were a couple of plum trees there. And I learned from a friend of mine who really is, he's very into plants, he's a landscape architect, that a lot of what we think are cherry blossoms are actually plums. I didn't know that. So if he ever watches this, shout out to you. You know who you are. He probably won't. Actually, he might. You never know. And I looked out and I saw this, what I thought was a cherry blossom tree, a plum tree in full bloom. All the flowers were there, and it was so beautiful. And I thought to myself, possibly while Pastor was speaking, and I was not paying attention, I looked out and I thought, wow, that wasn't there last week. Not the tree. The tree was very obviously there, but the flowers were not there. And it was just a week's time. And I thought, that's amazing. And then when I was listening to the song during the prophetic painting session, this was after that sermon, I thought, I'm going to paint that. I'm going to paint that tree. And so I don't know if you remember, but I painted this plum tree, not a cherry blossom. I always thought it was a cherry blossom, but I painted this plum tree. And I knew that day that was God saying to me, this is your life. This is your life. And, you can strive and you can wait and toil and you can wish for things to happen all you want. But until it's time, until it's my time, it will not happen. But when it happens, it can happen overnight. Just like what Uncle Frank said about Jesus turning water into wine. I've shared this with a couple of my friends who are non-Christian, this next analogy that I'm going to share about, there's a verse, and you'll know where it is. A lot of you probably will. I don't. It says that, you know, to God, 1,000 years is like a day, and a day can be like 1,000
Psalm
years.
90.
Psalm 90, there we go. Now we know where it's from. And we, you know, I thought of my life in those terms at that point. And we are primarily, I would say, well, we're physical beings. We're also spirit and soul. But we're accustomed to thinking and acting and living in the physical realm. But we don't know what God is working inside us, in our spirit and in our soul. There may be things that are dormant. There are things that He's growing and that He's nurturing that we don't see because we're human, you know. But when it comes time for Him to bring it forth, at His time, He will bring it forth into beauty, into greatness, into, you know, fulfillment of perhaps your life's purpose, what God created you for. And so I painted that little tree, and that was the second year that I had applied for law school. And the first year I hadn't gotten in anywhere. And by this time around, it was 2014, April, and nobody had accepted me yet. I was still waiting. But after that day, at that moment, I knew it was going to be okay. God put it in my heart. It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. And then, you know, from that time, I would say, until this time, I've seen growth and change, and I've seen visibly, as a human being, I've seen signs and examples of God working and doing things in my life that I don't understand, you know, and that I would never have dreamt of or imagined. You know, for those of us who have been with GEM, for, you know, 5-10 years, who would have imagined that we would be meeting here on the First Nations Musqueam Reserve, you know, amongst our brothers and sisters, our Musqueam brothers and sisters, who honor us by inviting us onto their land. You know, I would never have imagined that. For those board members and the founding members, could you have imagined that? Probably not.
No.
You know, but here we are, and it's a privilege to be here. It really is. And, you know, as someone, you know, I'm sure a lot of younger people have learned a lot about the importance of truth and reconciliation and the history of what has happened to the First Nations in Canada through, you know, the residential schools and all that. And I see, you know, I think I was at a convention, a continuing legal education convention that the Law Society put on for all the lawyers in BC about how the Law Society should implement these so-called principles of truth and reconciliation. And I thought about, you know, how our church is here, you know, and I thought about how we don't understand what we're here for, but God brought us here. And I feel that, you know, it's regardless of our, you know, ethnic or racial backgrounds, we are family,
Amen.
you know, and you know, Sadie and Martin and Shauna and Calvin and Denise, you're our family.
Amen.
And I don't know why I'm getting emotional here. I'm so proud and so privileged to be here. And I feel that this signals something that God wants to do for the First Peoples of Canada. And we're here, we're little, and we're a weird church.
We're strangers.
Whenever I tell my friends about our church, they're kind of like, whoa, whoa. You know, but here we are. And we may not think about it, and we may not recognize, but we're here as part of God's plan, and
Amen.
in God's hand, and in His timing. And so, you know, okay, I hope I don't cry a lot because I put on makeup today. I usually but, you know, so from that time, from, you know, when I painted that painting till now, I guess has it been 5 years?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I can't believe it's been 5 years. Everyone who painted, think about your little painting. Can you believe it's been 5 years since you painted those paintings?
Yeah.
I can't believe it. You know, yet here we are by God's grace. You know, we've been through a lot of things, personally and as a church, I think, through these 5 years. You know, we've moved churches, you know, some members of our congregation have gone through huge life changes. You know, I know my dad, Auntie Susan, also went through, you know, these major changes, and, you know, Pastor and Auntie Vivian are grandparents now, you know, and everyone's so big, you know, all the kids. You know, it's amazing. But here we are, you know, and by His grace and in His time. And so, you know, how many, I'm not going to be all like, participate, everyone, because, you know, unlike some people, I'm not going to call you out and be like, anyways. But how many of you kind of know the story about how I got into law school and how I got my job? I mean, I'm sure some of you have heard bits and pieces of it. I think, well, obviously my parents know. Auntie Vivian knows. Pastor Byrne. Who else knows? Put up your hand. Staff's like, oh, I'm going to hear it for like a tough time. Shauna, do you know it?
I want to hear it.
Okay, she wants to hear it. Good enough. I'm not going to go into the whole story because, again, as I said, I think that, you know, the Lord works in different people's lives in different ways. And some things that are super special to me may not be as special to and you even like my parents, because we're all different people. But I think that God knows each one of us, and He knows what we need to learn at the right time.
Amen.
Okay? And He's faithful. He'll bring us again and again to the same lesson in different ways if we don't learn right away, because He's patient and He loves us.
Yes.
You know, last night I was talking to some friends of our families that, you know, we used to attend church or go to a home fellowship with. And this gentleman, his son, actually it's Ian Tang, Boone's friend, right? Franklin, your friend Ian. So I was talking to Uncle Jeff, who is Ian's dad, and we were talking about how Ian doesn't really speak Chinese. You know, they're Chinese. And Jeff, the father, said, oh, I hope that my son someday he'll come to appreciate and embrace his own culture and the roots. And I said that he will someday, you know, maybe not right away, but he will. He probably will. And I thought about, you know, my own journey to appreciating, I'm still learning, my own culture, my own background, my own people. And God brought me to that in an amazing way. But He made me confront my own prejudices, my own lack of love, my own pride. And He brought me to love and to appreciate my cultural background in a very unique way. It happened in Israel, actually, a few years ago. But I'm getting so distracted. This is so bad. So so remember that, but I'll start from kind of when I got into law school till now. So basically, my family and some of the other church members here went to the Open Heavens Conference in Israel, in Jerusalem, in June 2014. And by that time, I still hadn't heard back about whether a law school would accept me or not. And, you know, right before I went on the trip, I made some, you know, there were a couple of bad choices in my personal life, and things weren't great. And I have to be honest with you all. You're my family. I'm not standing up here saying, oh, like, look at my life, how great it is. I'm imperfect. I make mistakes, and I've made bad choices, even like quite recently, and I'm not perfect. So I want to get that out there. I want to put that out there so that I can be humble and accountable to my church family, because I think that's very important. I'll get back to my story, but I think one of the things that we all know is that it's best to be humble and to be open. But yet, we all still want to look good and preserve a certain kind of veneer, an outside appearance of whatever it is that we want ourselves to be perceived as. Even within our family, our physical family, and within our church family, I want to encourage you to drop that, okay? That wasn't something I was planning to say, but lay that down. Doesn't mean that you have to go out and tell everyone everything, okay? But approach with love, listen with love, be open, and don't be afraid to acknowledge that you've been wrong and that you've made mistakes. Because some of the most valuable lessons that God's taught me flowed out of me following that attitude, okay? So anyways, I wasn't in a great place. I was sick, like I had a cold, a really bad cold in Israel. We got there and it was, like 40 degrees outside and just dry, and I was inside. I was wearing my mom's turtlenecks, For all those who know my mom, she's got I think she's got 2 turtlenecks on today. It's April and she's wearing 2 turtlenecks. So, and a hat. So I was wearing my mom's turtleneck in Israel in our hotel room, and I was miserable because I was coughing, I was runny nose, and not my life was a mess, but I'd made some bad personal life choices. And I thought to God, okay, I get it. I have to learn. You're teaching me a lesson. The only thing that would make me feel better is if I got accepted to a law school. The only thing. But I was like, I know that you want me to learn that, I have to learn these lessons. So I said I accept. And so the conference started, and there was a special meeting in the morning on the second day. I don't know if it was the first or the second day of the conference. The second day, where Sadhu, who is running this conference, he's asked all the leadership of the churches to come to the congregation, to a meeting place early, before the rest of the congregation came and before the meeting started for the day. And so Pastor Bernard asked my parents to go, and he said I should come too. And so I thought, okay. So I went, and Sadhu, I think that this was totally off the cuff. Like, he didn't expect to have to share this, but I think it's something that the Lord wanted him to share. And he said to the leadership that were gathered there, he said, you need to lay down your plans and the ways that you have conducted yourselves, the ways that you have done things in your life, your plans for the future, all that, God wants you to lay it down before him again, once again. And so I was there and I thought, okay. And they asked us to pray and to receive this. But they said, if you're going to do this, you have to be serious, because you're making a promise to God that you're going to get out of the driver's seat. Well, you never were in the driver's seat, but you're going to get out of the driver's seat that you think you're in control of your life and everything that's going on, and you're going to let God have that place. And so I was kind of scared, because I said to my mom, I said, that's a big deal, just in your head, when you actually think things through. And I think Pastor is very generous to me. He said just now that I'm a deep thinker or something. I don't think I think that deeply. Compared to some other
Serious.
people. Okay, serious. Okay, fine. Serious. Not deep, serious. What's the difference? Deep's too much. She's like, you're not a deep thinker. But I said to my mom, I said, I'm scared, I don't know if I can do this. And she said, do you want to do this? Do you want God to take that place in your life again? I'm paraphrasing. I don't think she said that exactly. But I said, yes, I do. And she said, just pray and tell God that that's what you want, that you're afraid, but that you're willing. And so I prayed that. And that day, oh, the horror for all the millennials, there was no Wi-Fi there. And this is before there was Roam Like Home. I mean, there was Wi-Fi, but we weren't staying at the hotel that the conference was being held at, so I had like no Wi-Fi, or no like access to the interwebs for the whole day. And so, but I got back to the hotel. They brought us back to the hotel for dinner, and to our hotel that we were staying at. We were staying at a different hotel. And I opened my inbox, my email, and there was an acceptance letter from UNB Law where I ended up going. And the first school that accepted me, and I freaked out, I was like, oh my gosh. So I freaked out, and I can go back and kind of look at the time. I mean, Israel's like 9 hours ahead of us here. Fredericton is 4 hours ahead of us, so I don't know if the times match up. But I'm pretty sure God was like, okay, she said yes. You can send out the acceptance letter today. Yeah. And what's even crazier is that Uncle Hang's making an appearance in my story here. Uncle Hang, the next day, I ran into Uncle Hang in the morning, and I said, Uncle Hang, I found out I got accepted to law school. And Uncle Hang was like, oh, great. He said, where? And I said, UNB. And then he said, UNB. He's like, in Fredericton? And I said, yes. And he said, I met a family from Fredericton here at this conference. And I thought, what? That's just bizarre and crazy. I've lived in Canada since I was born here. I've only met one person from New Brunswick before in my entire life. And here we were in Israel, and he was saying that he's met a family from Fredericton. I thought, wow, this is quite something. And so he went off and he found them, which is also a small miracle because there's several hundred people at that conference. And he came back with this young family, a couple. The husband's name is Tony, his wife's name is Rebecca, and their little baby boy, Joshua. And they introduced themselves and they said, well, if you end up coming to Fredericton, here's our contact information. Feel free to get in touch. And so I did go there, and their family took me to church almost every Sunday, the whole 3 years that I was there. The only Sundays that they didn't take me was because I was doing worship and I had to go early and other people brought me. But the mother-in-law, so the wife, Rebecca, her mom, cooked me home-cooked lunches. Every Sunday that they drove me to church, they would bring me back to their place and have, good home-cooked food for me. And it was amazing because this was like a small family away from home. So the husband, he's from, I think, Beijing, and the wife's family is Malaysian Chinese. And so her and her older brother had gone to UNB to study engineering, and then the rest of the family had joined. And so the in-laws, the parents, were there, and the mother-in-law is an excellent cook. She cooked fantastic meals, Asian food, Western food, you name it. She was a wizard with food. And God knows I love my food, right, Seth? And it was amazing because the day that I moved back to come back to Vancouver after my 3rd year, I wasn't prepared. That's a theme that I feel like you guys would be picking up on. And I hadn't packed. And this whole family came to my aid. So the wife was in my apartment with me, packing my boxes. We were carrying the boxes down to her husband, who was waiting in the truck. He was driving the boxes to the in-laws' house, and the in-laws were unloading my boxes into their basement. So God provided this family. And this is just one example of how like amazingly he provided for me in his own way. And I think that, the one thing that I want, okay, maybe I'll tell the rest of the story. So after I graduated from law school, I came back here and I didn't have an articling position. So in BC, actually in all provinces, after you graduate from law school, you have to get an internship called articling for a period of usually around a year before you can take the bar exam and get called to the bar. And Auntie Vivian knows this. Pastor Jonathan knows this because his daughter, she's a lawyer as well. And so I came back with no job, nothing on my radar. And actually a couple things, but nothing really. And the summer before, I had interviewed, God had given me an interview at the firm that I work at now, okay, for articling. And in an amazing way, I cold emailed this firm along with many others, and they were one of the 2 or 3 firms that responded. So out of like 40 or 50 emails that I sent out, this is one of the only ones that called, this is the only one that called me back. And my boss, Auntie Vivian, you met my boss that day. My boss called me on the worst day ever. So I was doing mental health law that summer between my 2nd and 3rd year. And I had run a hearing for a client who completely wrecked all the good work that I did for her by testifying in her own case. So I had set things up very well, and then she started talking. I was like, no, don't talk. And she spent 2 or 3 hours just destroying the case that I had made for her. And on top of that, I had another hearing that was coming up, and things were just so stressful, and I was melting down. I went home, and usually when I need to melt down, I melt down to my mom. And this goes back to, I guess, Uncle Frank's little anecdote about men and women and how they deal with people coming to them with problems.
It's not anecdote, it's wisdom.
Okay, it's wisdom. Okay, it's wisdom. Uncle Frank's wisdom. So I came back and Mom wasn't home, and so Dad was home, and so he's a captive audience, even though he's not Mom, he'll do. So I was just melting down, and I was crying and just in an absolute state and freaking out. And then I hear my phone ringing, and I usually don't have my phone volume on, but that day, because I was waiting to hear back about that second case that I had that was not looking good, I had put my phone volume on. So my phone's just ringing. I was angry, and I was like, that phone, and my dad said, you should answer the phone. And I said, no, I don't want to answer it. He said, just go get the phone. And so I went and grabbed the phone, and I was like, hello. I didn't even have the mom ability to be in the middle of being angry. You know when moms get the phone, even when they're angry, they're like, they can be like, so angry at you. But then someone calls, it can be a telemarketer, and they'll be like, hello? As if they weren't just ripping the skin off of you. So anyway, so I didn't have that. Maybe it's because I'm not a mom yet. Maybe Shara has that now. Maybe Shara has that miraculous ability. But I didn't, and it was my boss, my now boss, and he said, hi, he said, is this Lydia? And I thought, oh, yes.
No.
And then he said, hi, I'm so-and-so from, this firm, and I was like, and he said, are you still interested in an interview? And I said, yes. And so he interviewed me, and this was in August 2016, and he said, I can't, decide on my own. He said, there are 2 other partners of this firm. We have to make the decision on who to hire jointly. He said, the other partners are away at a conference, so I'll let you know. And it's interesting because they were actually in Fredericton for a conference, out of all places. But then this was in August. In October, he emailed me and said, hey, sorry, we selected someone else. And I was really upset. I was disappointed. But I thought, okay. But I was so impressed by my boss and in my interaction with him. He just seemed like a really nice guy. And he is a really nice guy. But sometimes. And when I came back, I emailed him. Well, actually, when I was studying for my finals, I thought, this was in April 2017, I still didn't have a job, and so I thought, I'll email him again. I'll just give it a try. And I emailed him, and I said, hi, I still don't have a job. Well, I don't know if I said that, but I said, I'm wondering if things have changed at your firm. I'm still interested in working for you. And I didn't hear back from him for a week, but then he emailed me back and he said, no, we don't have anything, but I'm happy to meet with you and give you advice. And so I thought, that's great. And so he did. And he recommended that I contact several people. And I got an interview coming out of that list of people that he recommended with this guy who turned out to be my first boss because I articled at 3 different firms. And that guy at the time, he said, oh, I can't commit to whether I'm hiring or not just because I'm running a big trial. You know, I'll let you know later. And so I followed up with him after a couple of months, and I went to see him again, and he said, sorry, haven't had time to think about it. And I was so disappointed when I went because, you know, I dressed up, you know, I put on my little suit jacket, went downtown to his office, expecting to have this conversation with him. But when I got there early, and I was sitting in the lobby, and I remember I was reading Habakkuk, like, is it Habakkuk 5 or 3:8 or something? The verse about
Not 5.
no fig trees or something?
There are only 3 chapters.
3.
Oh, okay, well, it's 3.
Yeah,
then.
3.
3:8? Is it 3? I don't know what
Yeah.
it is. I'm gonna
Mhm.
crack the Bible for
Yep.
this. And I'm gonna be embarrassed because I don't know what order it's in. Pastor, I will read more, I promise. But Habakkuk is
Yeah.
later on. And I had it memorized. I still kind of do, but I just want to read it out to you just to be more sure. It's before Zechariah. I
Yeah.
know.
Before.
There it is.
Yeah.
So it's Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 17. And it says, though the fig tree may not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, though the labor of the olive may fail, and the fields yield no food, though the flock may be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will joy in the God of my salvation. The Lord God is my strength, he will make my feet like deer's feet, and he will make me walk on my high hills. Not high heels, high hills, but also on high heels, for those of us who know high heels. And I went up to see this guy and this lawyer, and he said, I'm still not in the position to speak to whether I can hire or not. And I was really disappointed because I went there and he saw me for maybe 2 minutes. And I said to him, I said, well, if you're still interested, please keep me in mind. And this was in July. And God arranged, you know, and this is too long of a story, I'm just gonna truncate it. So I used to work at a restaurant before I went away to law school, and every time I came back from law school for summer or for Christmas, my manager would let me go back and work there, just for a couple of shifts. He's a great manager, you know, a real mentor, someone who's taught me a lot. And I think Pastor Jonathan, it's Chad, he'll know who that is because his son worked at the same restaurant that I worked at. Isn't that weird? Anyway, so another cool God moment, I guess. And so I was back working at this restaurant, and I was working on a night that I don't normally work, which is Sunday nights. And I wasn't even working, I was just doing a little trial kind of shift, learning from our wine department because we have a very good wine program at the restaurant. And so they said, yeah, sure, you can come in on a night where we're not very busy and you can learn about the wines and you can try the wines. And they said normally the sommeliers, when they try wine, they have to spit it back out, but we won't care if you just drink it. And I said, okay, thanks. But I'm not enough of a connoisseur to know the difference between good wine and bad wine. So if I was at that wedding, if they'd served the $10 bottle at the beginning, I would have just been as happy as if they'd served the Jesus wine. Actually, no, I'm sure the Jesus wine is special. So I go out into the dining room. They said, oh, go pour a bottle for this table. And it was my boss that I work for now. His name is Jeff. And so he was there for his anniversary with his wife. And I thought, oh, hi. He said, hi. And he said, oh, what's going on with your articling search? And I said, well, I have a job offer right now, and I did at the time. And he said, well, what about Mike? He said, what about that first guy, the guy who had told me he wasn't hiring? And I told Jeff, I said, well, he said he's not sure he's gonna hire, and I said, I don't wanna talk to you about this now, you're enjoying your anniversary dinner. He said, just give me a call next week, and so I said, okay. And so the wine director said, oh, you can give them a little bit of complimentary dessert wine, and I thought, that's great, and they gave me some complimentary desserts to give to them, and I thought, this is great. They leave, and then when the night's over, the restaurant's closed. One of the managers said to me, oh, you're not gonna get a job with that guy. And I said, what? And he said, oh, didn't you know? He said the server didn't know that we wanted to complimentary give this wine away. We charged them for the wine that you gave them. And I was just like, oh my goodness. and then the wine team, they were all like, oh no, why did you tell her? They didn't want to tell me because that's kind of a big mistake, you know? And so I was so embarrassed, and I had to call this guy. And so I thought about it, and I thought, I have to tell him. And so I called him. And the first thing I said to him was, hey, I was like, Jeff, I said, you know, the wine that we gave you at the end. He said, yeah, that was really nice, thank you. I said, well, we actually charged you for that. And he was like, oh, he said, I didn't even notice. And he said, well, I said, you know, I'm going to put you in touch with my manager. We're going to refund you. I said, I really apologize about that. And so as soon as I got that off my chest, I felt a little better. And during that conversation, he said to me, well, what's going on with you? Because this firm that I work at, we do almost all criminal defense. And I said, he does a little bit. And Jeff said at that point, he said, well, if you do end up accepting the job with this fellow in Burnaby, he said, you're welcome to come work at my firm for a month. We'll pay you and so that you can have some experience. And I said, that's very kind of you. God arranged that job didn't work out. You know, that job, I thought I was going to have to do that job. I wasn't like crazy about it, but I thought it's a job. But God said, nope, you're not going to work here. And so that job, you know, was off the table. And in the meantime, though, the place that I had interned at the summer before, the place where I was doing mental health law, they actually offered me a job as a legal advocate. So not an articling student, but doing legal type work. And so I thought, okay, I'll work there while I'm looking for articling. And so I was going to quit my job at the restaurant. And on one of the last nights that I was working at the restaurant, I wasn't even supposed to be working, but a coworker needed the night off because it was Thanksgiving weekend and she wanted to go visit her family on the island. So I agreed to work for her. And it was really busy. I went into work and, you know, I had worked a full day and then I was doing my second shift now. And 10 minutes into the evening, Mike, that first lawyer who had interviewed me, he walked in. And I said, oh, hi. And he said, hi. And I didn't really have time to think about talking to him or anything. It was so busy. So I showed him to a table and then I went back out. And a few minutes later, he came up to me and he said, email me next week. He said, I have an idea. And I said, okay. And so I emailed him the following week and he emailed me back and he said, I'm thinking of setting up a split articling situation for you where you'll spend a few months with me and a few months with another lawyer. And I thought, well, this is great. And I thought, that's wonderful. And I didn't hear back from him for a couple of weeks. And I asked him again and he said, nope, still no luck. And at the same time, the nonprofit that I was working at, the HR manager asked me, she said, hey, what's going on with your articles? Have you found anything yet? And I explained the situation that someone had offered me a few months. And she said, we might be able to help you out. We can give you a few months. And so I thought, okay. And finally it worked out that Mike gave me 4 months, and then the nonprofit gave me 3 months. And I said, I still need 2 months. So I emailed Jeff and I said, hey, can you can I work at the firm for 2 months? I just need 2 months to finish my articles. And he said, I need to talk to the partners. And this was in November or December. In December, early December. And so there I was, waiting. And Mike said, if you work for me, I need you to start in January. And this was December. And the Law Society has requirements that somebody who wants to start articling, they have to submit their whole application package at least a month in advance of when they intend to start. And so the clock was ticking, but I couldn't exactly go and say, hey Jeff, can you make up your mind now? Give me an answer. But on December 15th, I got an email and he said, yes, we'll take you for 2 months, your last 2 months. And so the following week, I had to submit my application, a part of which is my transcript from law school. And so I go onto the UNB website and I looked and it said all December transcript requests must be submitted on or before December 15th. This was the 17th that I saw that. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this cannot be happening. So I woke up at 4 in the morning on the Monday, which was the 17th or the 18th. And I called New Brunswick because they're 4 hours ahead. And I explained the situation to the woman who picked up. And I didn't say, oh, please, you have to help me. I just told her exactly the situation. And she said, okay. She said, well, we'll see what we can do. She said, call back on Thursday. And I called back on Wednesday. And the woman, it was the same woman, she said, yeah, we sent it out today by courier. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, thank you. And this was the 19th or the 20th by this time. And sure enough, I received it on the 21st, the transcript. And I got my application in on the 21st or the 22nd, which is right before the Law Society closed for Christmas. And I had to start my articling on January 29th. So the application has to be in on or before December 29th. So I haven't done the exact math, but I think my application was submitted right in time. And it's interesting because I sent an email to thank the transcript department at UNB, and the woman who replied, her name was Lydia as well, and I thought maybe that's what incentivized her to help me, because she said, here's a fellow Lydia in need, I'll help her. We'll never know. But anyway, so it worked out that I got this job. So 4 months with the first boss, 3 months at the nonprofit, and then my last 2 months at the firm where I have a job now. And it's amazing because normally when people get articling, they talk to the the potential employer, and they get to ask, are you going to hire back? Is there any possibility of staying on as a lawyer at this firm? I didn't have that discussion with any of these firms because I was just happy to have, to get my articling done. And my first boss, Mike, had said he would pay the fee for my bar course, so you also have to take a bar course. And then later on I found out that my current boss offered to split it with him, even though I was only working for them for 2 months. So I thought, how kind, that's really nice. And I started working for this firm in the end of November, and November 19th, and I told one of the younger lawyers, she said to me, she said, if you want to stay here, you have to tell the partners. She said, you have to make your intention known. And I thought, okay. And so I told Jeff, my boss, one of my bosses, after 2 weeks or so of starting work there, I said, I'd really like to stay. But I had no expectation of staying because there were 2 other articling students at the same time who were there before me and who had pre-existing connections to the firm. Both of them had interned at the firm before, and one of them had even worked there as a receptionist. So I didn't expect anything. But then on December 19th, exactly 1 month after I started, the founding partner of the firm said to me, he said, come to my office. And I said, okay. So I grabbed a little notebook and went in his office, and he shut the door. And I thought, that's strange, he usually doesn't shut the door. And he said, what are you doing after you article? And I said, well, I'm not really sure yet. He said, well, how would you like to stay here? And I said, I was in shock. I said, I would love that. And he said, we have just gotten a couple of big cases. And he said, I want you to stay and work on some of these cases. And I said, yes, I would love that. And, you know, exactly 1 month after I started working there, God gave me this job. And so I can't fathom it. You know, sometimes when I'm down in the trenches, in the salt mines, as my boss calls it, sometimes when I'm having a really bad day, even thinking of all these things, it doesn't bring me out. You know, and it just shows that it's not our own thoughts or our own positive thinking or whatever. We can't really do anything ourselves. We can't control our state of mind, but God is in control. And we, as his children, we're blessed and we're so privileged that even when in the midst of, you know, things that are happening in our lives that are within our control, outside of our control, when everything is going, you know, sideways, upwards, down, we have him, and he's the most important thing. He's the only thing that matters. And so I got this job, you know, and everything's been done very non-traditionally, you know, and what God taught me, okay, it was very interesting because I took my oath to be a lawyer officially on January 29th. On January 30th, when I went back to work the next day, I heard some of the lawyers talking. They were talking about, you know, one of these big cases that we're involved in. And they were talking and they were saying, oh, there's some news and there's some discussion that this case might go away. You know, there may be some shift in kind of the proceedings where this case could just go away and, you know, our involvement would be ended. And I kind of freaked out because I thought, oh my gosh, I said, that's the reason why I got this job. If the case goes away, then maybe my job will go away. And then God, in that moment, a thought came to my head. Don't think like a human. Don't think like yourself. He said, I've given you this. Don't look at what you've got in your hand. Look at me. Do you think that I can't give you more? And it's really interesting because, you know, since that time, I've, you know, run into some difficulties at work. There are many different challenges, you know, when you're doing criminal defense, it's quite difficult, you know. Clients can be difficult, it's very stressful, very long hours, but I also had some, I would say, maybe disagreements or situations at work that I felt wronged and my feelings were really, really hurt. And that actually happened this week. And I cried at work, you know, not in front of, like, I went into an office and closed the door and I was crying, but it doesn't mean it's easy or it's perfect, you know, but this is what God has given me. And it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. You know, my bosses, they give great mentorship and I'm learning things that, you know, I'm not thinking of, oh, what are you learning or what are you doing? Because I think God's trying to condition me out of thinking like a human being. We limit him by how we think, all of you, myself included. You know, we like to think, this is how God will work. God will provide this for me. I want this. This is the normal route to reaching this next level or getting into this position or whatever. That's not how he does things. He does things in a unique and wonderful way. What we just need to do is to trust him. Absolutely, completely and totally. And recently I was saying to my parents, I think I was saying this to both my parents, but I remember saying this to my mom. I said that now I've reached the point in my life, I think, where I know and I feel that God's just with me there all the time. he's a constant presence. He's a constant, not that I physically feel aware of him, but I'm just so assured of his love and his care and his plan for me that even when I'm in the midst of very difficult situations, I know he's there, and I'm not afraid. Even though, yes, it's very difficult, and sometimes I'm sad and I feel very stressed out, I know he's there, and I'm so confident, and I know beyond a shred of a doubt that he's there for me. That, you know, some of my friends have encountered difficult situations in the past year or so. And I think that we sometimes, we naturally, and maybe as a woman, we want to help when we hear people have problems. You know, if someone comes to you and says, you know, this is going on, I've lost my job or whatever, our instinct, we just want to say, oh, it's going to be okay, maybe because I'm a woman. Maybe if I was a man, I would just be like, well, bum luck, pick it up and move on, you know? But my instinct is to say, oh, it's going to be okay, or, you know, how can I help? We can't do that much. Our abilities are very finite. You know, we can't offer much. Yeah, we can offer support, but as many of you know, as all of us know, I think, there are situations in life where we have absolutely no control at all. And that even those who are closest to us, our parents, our spouse, our siblings, our children, they, even if they wanted to help, they can't be there for us. And don't get me wrong, God gave us family, God gave us friends. He gave us all these things because he loves us. But they're not the most important. And I can say that confidently with my parents in this room. Because I know that God is the most important. He is the only one that really, really matters. And so I've been able to say to my friends that, you know, I care about you, and I'm sorry that you're going through this. I'll pray for you. And I know that I invite you to pray with me. I know that God will make a way, that he will come through for you, and that his will be accomplished if you're willing to have faith in him. And I say that, and I'm sure, I know it. I know it to the fiber of my being. And I think a few years ago, maybe I wouldn't have been able to say that. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to know that so confidently. But now I do, and I realize, and maybe it's just like any of us, as we grow and we mature, we understand more of, let's say, as a child, we understand more of our parents' love for us. And we know how much they care for us. And that, you know, empowers us and helps us to go on. That's the same with God. I think as we grow to know him more, as we put effort into, you know, becoming closer to him, and as he accomplishes more and more for us, you know, we become more confident and we know more of his love for us. So, you know, oh yes, I guess I'll end off with my last story. So my last story is about what I said at the beginning, about getting back in touch with my cultural background and my roots. So this happened in 2015 when my family, this was the last conference in Israel that we went to, the Open Heavens Conference. And it was day 2 or day 3, somewhere in the middle of the week during this conference. And Sadhu said, oh, we have an opportunity for you to assist the Jewish people by donating blood. And I thought, that's really strange, and I thought, I've never donated blood before. But I chose to donate blood. I thought, okay, this will be interesting. And this organization, they explained to us, they said Red Cross, which is the organization that collects and provides blood, they don't service Israel because they disagree with the Israeli government's regime and their position against the Palestinian people. And so they said, you know, everyone please, if you feel impressed to do so, you can sign up and donate blood this afternoon. And so I thought, I'll do it. I've never donated blood before, so I signed up. And interestingly enough, there's a huge contingent of people from China there. A lot of Chinese people, mainland Chinese people. And a lot of them signed up to donate blood too. And there were so many people that the organization, the people who were there from the organization to collect blood, they said, there's so many people that we don't want you all to line up here. Just take a number and then come back at a later time. And so my dad and I, we had signed up to donate blood. We went back to the blood donation room around an hour before the evening service started, and the lineup was huge. It was this huge lineup, and it was almost all Chinese people. And I thought, this is such a gong show. This is a mess. There's so many people here. How are we all going to donate blood before the time the service starts? And so I was standing there in line with my dad, and I was impatient and kind of fidgety. And then I see all, these Chinese people come and kind of budge in line ahead of us. And some of them would kind of wave and see a friend from church, oh, hi, and then they would come and join the line. And I was getting so aggravated. I was so annoyed, and I thought, oh, why? And I thought, okay, and I know we're Chinese here, and here I am, showing that I was arrogant and rude, and I thought, why are they budging? Why are they like this? Why don't they, respect the fact that we were in line? And I was saying this to my dad, and my dad was just like, don't. And we had to fill out a little sheet about providing our information, blood type, or known kind of health conditions to this organization before we could donate blood. And the form was in Hebrew and in English, no Chinese. And so I was like, sorry, Chinese people, no Chinese for you. And this lady who had budged right in front of me, she turned around kind of timidly. She had a blank form, and she said, 请问你可以帮帮我吗? She said, excuse me, can you help me? And I was just like, oh, you want my help? Lady who budged in front of me, and I said, and in that moment, I thought, I don't know what was going through my head, but I'd have to be a real jerk to say, 对不起，我不可以帮你, which is sorry, I can't help you, or oh, I don't speak Chinese. I could have said that to her. That would have been a huge lie. But you would have to be a real jerk to say, I can't help you in Chinese, or I don't speak Chinese. I'll let you think about which one's worse. I think they're both really bad. One's a lie and one's just rude. So I helped her, and she asked me, she said, what does this mean? She pointed to a line on the form, and I wanted to say to her, lady, why are you pointing to this line? Your whole form is empty. So she had this big page, and she pointed to this little line at the bottom. She said, 这说什么? Like it was this line at the bottom. She said, what does this line mean? And I was like, lady, your whole form is empty. And I said, well, it means this. And I explained it to her. And she said, 你可以帮我写吗? She said, can you help me write it out? I said, fine. I said, whatever. I said, just give me the whole form. So I took her form, and I asked her the questions on the form. Her name, her date of birth, all these questions. And she was telling me the answers, and I was writing them out for her. She said, oh, 我老公也在, 你可以帮他吗? My husband is here. Can you help him fill his out too? And I was like, oh, okay, all right, here it goes. So it begins. So I helped 老公, I helped the husband, I helped him fill his out too. And then by that time the line had kind of progressed forwards, and I could see the inside of the room where they were accepting donations. The room was a mess. There were 5 or 6, I guess, paramedics in there, the people from the organization, and everyone, it was chaos. There was just people everywhere, and there was one woman in there translating, and everyone else was just kind of running around like chickens with their heads. So I elbowed my way in, and I said to the man from the organization, the manager or whatever, I said, excuse me, I said, do you think you're going to be able to get all these people in? And he said, we don't speak the language. He said, we could, but he said, there's too many people people and nobody can speak the language. And I said, I can speak the language. He said, you can speak the language. And I said, yes. He said, okay. I said, I can help you. And so he said, come and, so beyond the form, there were other questions that had to be asked, screening people. And so he said, come sit in this little booth here, and you can translate for the person who's doing the final screening process. And I told my dad, and my dad came and helped too. So we were helping, move this line along. And one by one, all the people who had budged in front of me, they had to come and sit in front of me, and I had to ask them questions. And they were all looking at me, kind of like, oh, she understands. She knows what we're saying. And so I sat in there, how long was it? Probably an hour or two? A couple of hours. And we helped them process the whole line of all these Chinese people. The whole line. And the service had started already, and we were still out there. And, there was just this real moment at the end where one lady and a lot of the Chinese people, they had matching scarves. So they all had these beautiful scarves made for their group coming to this conference. And I don't know what it is. I think Chinese people, they really like to have matching hats or matching things when they go en masse. They all come in with their matching little yellow hat, and the person at the front's got the flag, okay, come on, let's go, and they all got their hats. I don't know if this is just a Chinese thing. So this lady comes up to me with one of their scarves, and it's actually a beautiful scarf. It's many colors. It's kind of silky, like the material that Shauna, that you're wearing, your white top. It's kind of that sheer chiffony material, and it's colorful, and it's got Bible verses on it. And this woman, she came to me and she said, I want to give this to you. She said in Chinese, she said, I want to give this to you. She said, you're a blessing to our people. And she pointed at me and herself. And I was just so overwhelmed. And even thinking about it, it makes me kind of want to cry. And she said, you've blessed us. She said, you've blessed us by what you've done today. And so she said, I want to pray for you. And I said to her, I told her, I was born in Canada, my parents are from Hong Kong, and I said, I want to tell you, I want to say to you that I've been resentful towards, mainland Chinese people in Vancouver. And I said, I've had a wrong attitude, and I said, I don't feel it's right for you to say that to me. And I don't remember how she responded, but she was very gracious. And she hugged me and she prayed for me. And, from that time on, God changed my heart. He really did. And so last night when Uncle Jeff, he said, I hope Ian, my son, will come to learn and appreciate the Chinese culture. And I said to him, God can bring him at the right time. And, my life has been filled with many of these little experiences since 2015. Maybe they were happening even before I noticed them. Maybe I just started noticing them in 2014, actually, when I painted that plum tree. But, God has a plan. And actually, this is my form. I keep it in my Bible. It's my blood donation form. I finally donated blood. I think I was the last person to donate blood out of the 500-600 people at that conference. And it's really interesting. I'm gonna totally go on a little tangent again, but I was walking around Jerusalem with my parents in between some of the conference dates, and I saw the Jewish people, just living their lives, buying groceries, attending their religious schools, playing the violin, and I thought, we're here, we're visiting. I said, how great would it be to be able to talk to a Jewish person and really to connect? And that night, after we donated blood, my dad and I, we sat with the paramedics and we were just chatting and talking, and there was no, oh, what are you doing here in Israel? There was none of that. Because I think the Jewish people, they can be quite skeptical of when non-Jewish people come to Israel. they're very protective of their country, and rightfully so. They don't understand that there is a God who's in control, who loves them. They don't know him. So, of course, they want to protect what they now have, what was taken away from them. And I better stop because she's going to come in and cry. Who wants to bet she's going to cry? Maybe she won't. Don't tell them I said that. But there was this moment. Oh. There was this moment after we donated blood where we were just all chatting, my dad and me, and all these Jewish paramedics. And I think they understood that something special had happened. They saw that. And what they saw was not me, they saw God's hand at work. And so, my life has been filled with a lot of these little moments. And, I can't take credit for it at all. Thank you for your well wishes. Family and friends have all said, oh, congratulations, you graduated, or you got articling, or now you're a lawyer. And I say to them, I can't take credit. And I tell them, non-Christians, Christians, and I say, it was God that gave it to me. God gave me everything. And they all say, no. Like, you have to take some credit for yourself. And I said, I really can't. Because I can't. It's all from him. And so, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to share today. That's a long story. Thank you for being patient. But yeah, I was reading the Bible and one verse came to me and I felt that I should share it with the congregation. I don't think it's very related to what I shared today, but it's Matthew chapter 23, verse 23. And it says, Jesus speaking to the scribes and the Pharisees, he said, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without leaving the others undone. And it's a verse that really spoke to me, and I feel that God wanted me to share that today. I read that last week or quite a few days ago. And basically, I think we all kind of know what it means. Maybe these Jews and these Pharisees and scribes, they were paying very attention to the letter of the law. They were tithing with the prescribed herbs or herbs, whichever you prefer. But they weren't carrying those principles that God takes very importantly and seriously in their hearts. And they weren't living these things out. And so I want to encourage all of us, I think sometimes we want to know God and we want to approach our relationship with him in a very, maybe a theoretical, just a by the book kind of approach. There's nothing wrong with that. It's great. We learn a lot from that. But open your heart and open your mind to allow him to speak to you and to teach you and to work in your life in ways that are completely unique and that you might not even know. And I guarantee he will bring you to a new place. He will teach you new things and he will expand you. So I think that's it for me today. So I just want to pray with everyone and we'll close off. Father God, I thank you for the opportunity that I had to share my story with my brothers and sisters here. Lord, we're just so privileged to have you and to be chosen by you and to know you. And Lord, we're privileged to be part of this body here. Lord, we are small in number, but Lord, I truly believe that every single person here, their hearts wish to know you and to love you. And so, Lord, I just want to pray over all of my brothers and sisters here and over myself. Even though we may be afraid to obey And we may be afraid to take that leap of faith that you may want us to take in whatever situation it is. Lord, I pray that you give each and every person here the desire to want to please you and to want to have you work in their lives. And Lord, I just thank you for your patience and for your love for us and for never giving up on us. So Lord, I ask that you touch each and every person here and that you come to them where they are in their lives, and Lord, hold their hand and lead them. And I pray that each person in each heart will be willing to take your hand as you extend it. And Lord, I pray that we will all be taught by you and that we will all have the right attitude and that we will take these things that you take seriously as well. Mercy and justice. And Lord, a love for you. Help us to lay aside those things that we cling to, maybe even these religious ideas or things that we seek to validate ourselves through or our relationship with you through. Help us to put those things aside. Help us to realize that all we need is you, and that when we have you, we have everything. So Lord, I thank you for each and every person here. I ask that you bless them. And Lord, I thank you for this time. And I thank you for loving us and for hearing this prayer. And I thank you for the work that you're doing in our lives, that you've done, that you are doing, and that you will do. Amen. Lord, we are your people. We were created by you, for you. And so, Lord, we seek nothing more than to live our lives in the way that you would have us live them. To glorify you, to honor you, with every thought, with every action, with every word. And Lord, truly help us to learn to love you and to love our neighbor. And our neighbor, it could be anyone, in whatever circumstance we're in, Lord God, wherever we are, at home, in our workplace, at our school, out on the street. Help us to love whichever person you put by us as our neighbor. And help us to see things the way you see things, Lord. I thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. That was wonderful. I want to reinforce what she has just testified. It's no coincidence that the Lord moved her to quote Matthew 23:23. Really, because of how the Lord has called her, even to the very vocation in society, right? Why do we say that? What is the other verse that is related to Matthew 23:23? Well, you can see that same verse in Luke 11:42. And where did Jesus get that verse from? Can anyone remember? Micah chapter 6, verse 8. That's the key verse that focuses us on what the will of God is. And Lydia may not know it, but go and study Micah 6. Micah 6, starting from verse 1.
I have it.
Oh, you have it.
On my necklace.
And that's the biggest court case that God opens in the Bible.
I remember you mentioned
Opens up the heavens, asking the mountains and the hills to be witnesses, even the foundations, because God has a court case against his own people. And God said, I've been doing all this for you and leading you and guiding you, and have I wearied you? Have I tired you? How come you're not even serving me? How come you're not responding? And then now the man of God, Micah, with the spirit of prophecy now speaking, and then says, what, oh man, how can you come and serve God then? What good does God require of you? And that's that. It says, not with just so many sacrifices or even rivers of oil. Do you think God would want that? Really? He wants your whole being, your whole heart to seek justice. Now, she's in the court of law. Justice, that's the first thing. To act with justice. That's the first thing. To act with justice. So you must know how to see what is right and wrong in ourselves, in society. We don't hide, we don't excuse injustice even in ourselves. And one of the things that I've seen in Lydia as she was growing up, she never excuses the things that are wrong. Never. Not once did I hear from her a rebellious tongue trying to excuse a decision that was made wrong. Now she had her own rebellious ways.
I just did it, but I didn't excuse it.
Yeah, you didn't excuse it, exactly. She did it, but she doesn't excuse it. Because she knows, she looks at justice even with, and that's one thing I've learned from the little girl as she was growing up. She dares to face the truth, like she will, like, look at that. This Chinese lady is going to pray and bless her, and she right on the spot would tell her, actually, I don't deserve to be because I was just judging you guys and all that. She would just openly tell that. She knows to admit that. That's a very important quality that we have to take a hold of. We make mistakes. Don't justify our mistakes. Yes, be humble. And see, she fulfilled the third thing, which is walk humbly with your God. So when truth comes in, we must acknowledge that and be teachable. And then love, the central component, love for those in a relationship, in a real form, to love mercy, to love hesed, to love mercy and love hesed. And you will see that, so all three aspects of this, you will see that in everyone who is learning Christ. We see that in Lydia, those of us who have seen her grow up. We make mistakes, she makes mistakes, but we can still fulfill the will of God. And that's why she ended with that scripture too, without knowing the larger implications of... See, I've seen her and I've seen you, and some of you I've told you directly many times, that you are a sign and a wonder. Today we encountered the word sign again. This is the first of the signs, and there are 7 so-called signs, semeion. Right? We are become the sign of the Lord. You are speaking something to testify what God is doing in your life, to align with the will of heaven. And some of us may be, we can say, more prominent signs. Just like you look at the street signs. Some signs are very prominent, they even have different colors and they stand out, right? But some signs are very little, but they are still signs. Some signs are on the ground, and you may not notice it because you just roll over it or walk over it. But some signs are lifted up high. Some signs will blink at you. So, but we are all signs if we fulfill our purpose. We are the sign and the wonder in the hand of the Lord. So we must understand that. So there's no need to say, like the road sign at the bottom of that line or that open line, they don't need to complain, how come I'm not that light up there, the sign that's blinking? Well, because God didn't choose to put you up there. So if God chose you to be very humble, you just stay humble. But you're still a sign. So, and we should be happy that the sign up there is shining brightly. When it's supposed to be green, it's green. It's supposed to be red, it's red. And we should be happy that the sign on the road there, it is yellow and it's a line. It's there and it's yellow and it's a line. We should be very happy for us being that sign. The widow with 2 mites is a sign and wonder because she is able to open up what God is impressed with, a life that has nothing and yet is rich in love. Even the 2 pennies that was given to the temple would be useless, and yet she is a sign for the disciples and for all of us. Right? So we don't need to despise ourselves or to envy one another's prominence, but we've got to stand true. The same test that the Lord put to Lydia, look at that. If Lydia did not respond, writing out 40 letters, more than 40 letters, what if she only did 10 emails? Or what if she did only 4? What if she did none? So some of us, we don't even write 1 letter or 10 letters or 40 letters. And yet we expect God to open up everything for us. No. God will but he needs to test you. And you can hear some of the, if you go into the details, even just the last few months, God had to put her in a situation at a particular time, at a particular place, and bring different people together in order to do something that would advance her. So God is behind it, and he's planning this person to be this person to be that, this person to do this, to bring it together. And so everything coincides together for you. If you are that sign that is willing to be a sign of the Lord, if you understand that you're responsible to the Lord, every detail of your life already God has planned, but it's some of those things are not yet. So, but you've got to endure through. You've got to endure through. You've got to endure through. And you might say that my life is not exciting and boring, but are you enduring through that? Are you believing that God is going to use you even like that widow with nothing? She lost her husband, no children, maybe the children died, and she's got nothing, she's going to die, but she's enduring to the loved ones. Even if I die, I want to bless God with my last 2 pennies. Are we willing to do that? Or if you are Paul, you are chosen for a great ministry, and you have tremendous ability and knowledge and talents. Are you willing to give it all for the sake of that calling, even though it's so much better to just check out and go in the presence of the Lord? Well, if you are a Paul, you would be prominent. You would be speaking to a lot of different audiences. You'll be sending messages that stir up a riot in this place and stir up a riot in that place. But yet you still have to speak it. You still have to chastise people, call people up, and you still have to teach them difficult lessons, and yet you have to teach them. But you are a Paul. That's where you're called to. So you do that. So you can understand that we are that sign and we are that wonder. So it doesn't matter where you are placed, you can live out the will of God. Thank you, Father. Let us arise and let's worship with that powerful prayer of the disciples. Our Father which art in heaven. You know, why did it start with hallowed be thy name? Why does it start with hallowed? Means make sacred, withhold. Because God's people through the generations, and Ezekiel names it best, because God said that you have not hallowed my name. You have not, you my people, you have not made my name holy. You have profaned my name. You have not protected my name. You have not been the true sign and the wonder that you must be carrying my name. And even that very opening, our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Jesus is reminding us we are to stand as true sign to proclaim his name, the testimony of Jesus. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Oh, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Praise, love, and glory be to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and evermore shall be, world without end. Amen. The Lord bless you. The Lord keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance before you as you walk, run, follow Jesus with his testimony shining brightly through all trials, tests, and circumstances, and to trust that he will carry you through and establish you in the work of your hand, now and always. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. Now, if you have noticed just now, even in the reading of the scripture of 1 Chronicles 29, our last phrase of thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. It's also something that David, right, also sang out. And so Julia said she really loved David. David's her favorite character. And David was well loved because he also caught the heart of God. He had the wisdom also operating. All right, so next Sunday, come to be challenged by the testimony of Jesus, by Jesus.